Hello, and welcome to something that I kind of swore I would never do. That's right, it is the Infinity tier list time. I'm here this evening with Nick from Lost of Tenant podcast. Nick, say hello.
Hello, Rob. How are you this evening?
I'm good, and thank you for this opportunity.
Absolute pleasure. So you did basically the genesis of this comes from the Infinity Global Facebook page where someone was asking for a tier list. One did not exist. You berated them somewhat, and I said, "Why don't we just do it?"
I think I made a pithy contribution. I wasn't intending to berate them. Nevertheless, here we are. So what you can see on the screen right now is good old-fashioned tier maker. I had to commit purgatory and make a Twitter account in order to access this site, but here we are. So this is every Infinity faction, all 42 of them. And Nick and I will be spending probably the next hour and a bit on ranking all Infinity factions in the current meta. That is post-Fireteam's update. We've had a bit of time to digest that now. We've played with some, all, or many of these factions, and so it's time, deeply unfortunately, to rank them.
And you say it's time now to do it. I mean, the data pool that we are working with is still fairly minimal in my opinion, but strike while the iron's hot. So let's just get it out there and let the chips fall where they may.
There's a few of these I'll be operating entirely on theory for.
Yeah.
Before we move into that, just how are we actually going to rank a faction S through D? And we did actually give this some thought. So here are our criteria for what makes a good or a bad faction. So the first thing is list versatility. How varied a set of lists can a faction make, or how much is it a mono-build faction? So a faction might be pushed towards the bottom end of the tier list if they only really had like one good build, whereas they'll be pushed towards the top if they've got lots of different builds they can make. The next thing is, what is the faction's scenario game like? And so in particular in a tournament environment, how well can the faction accommodate varied scenarios easily, or does it have scenarios that it has to kind of build to solve? So if you've ever gone to an event and you've had yourself being like, oh, well, I've got to build one list just for countermeasures, that's probably an indication that your faction maybe is a little bit further down or isn't easily cresting the top of the wave in the tier rankings. Similarly, how is the faction's table game? Can it play on a variety of variety of tables, wide or open, weird or vanilla, or does it really like one particular kind of table? So, for example, before the existence of the Chernobog, Ariadne might have been pushed a little bit down as a result of that, because it liked closed-in tables and didn't necessarily want to fight on wide open ones. The next thing, what makes a good faction, is mechanical uniqueness. So does the faction do or have something that other factions just kind of don't or can't? Toha, for example. There are lots of things about Toha that are kind of just mediocre. They don't have high ballistic skills across the board, for example. They have little hacking, but they do have a whole bunch of things that are almost totally unique to themselves in Spiral Core, which makes them an interesting and good faction to play. It means that people won't be as experienced against what you can do compared to what other factions can do. Ferroware is different to hacking, and that pushes a faction up. Similarly, if a faction does absolutely nothing interesting or different, it's probably going to be drawn down. And then the last thing is just sheer mechanical power. Does a faction have lots of strong or effective for cost profiles, or does it have kind of weak, non-powerful for cost profiles? So those are 5 criteria. We'll be ranking all factions according to them, and I suggest we kind of get started because there's 42 of the damn things.
That's it. Let's go.
They've been randomly shuffled, so we're going to lead in.
Before we start, I do just want to mention as well, we did discuss if we do go full meme with this list and just put everything into the same A tier, because Infinity as a game, it does come down to so much of the game comes down to the tactical decisions made on the day by the players themselves, more so than what necessarily they bring to the table or is being brought by the table. But we thought it was too much of a commitment to the bit to do that for every single faction. So just throw it out there. We will be taking this semi-seriously as much as we can.
Yep. I stand with Nick basically against the idea of tier lists in Infinity, but hey, listen, the idea got bandied around. We're going to do one. Don't take this super seriously, and let's kick on in. So to start with, our very first one is the Shock Army of Acontecimento. Nick, where do you reckon they stand?
Look, Shockers, they're good, right? They're by no the A tier, in my opinion, resting towards even S tier because like there's a lot of stuff that they do very well in terms of list build flexibility. In terms of all of our criteria, they do tick all the boxes. I'd say the only thing I put them in A rather than S, and my main reason for that, with particularly Shock Army, as an army that's out of print, in terms of I know accessibility is not a factor on this list, but I do think it should come into play if you are considering, like, people who are looking at this type of thing might be considering jumping around factions. And sure, you've got the proxy rules, but a lot of time people still want to use the models for that actual faction. You'd be quite hard pressed to actually collect this faction fresh off the bat.
Fair enough.
Which is why I bring them back down from S tier. What are your thoughts on Shock?
I think like a lot of Pan-Oceania, they're a firm A tier. I'm hesitant to put any Pan-Ocean faction in S tier because kind of every Pan-Ocean faction has a degree of baked in. Like, if you play Pano, you're kind of agreeing to the trade of you get mechanical power, you have the highest ballistic skill kind of across the board, but you get that in exchange for giving up mechanical uniqueness and capabilities. You have a little bit of hacking, but you don't have a real hacking game. You don't have smoke. You don't have white noise. There isn't a single hacking device plus in any of the Pan-Oceanian factions. And for me, Acontecimento actually are one of the best positioned of Pan-Oceanian factions because they can draw on, they have got different kinds of tags and they're both fantastic. They get a great remote suite. They get fantastic links. And I'm saying this post-Fireteam change. The Acontecimento Sapper Sniper and Acontecimento link is rolled gold. People kind of forgot about that when N4 came out, but Sapper Snipers are amazing. So the only, the closest thing to a downside I would list for Acontecimento is that they tend slightly towards monobuild just because you can put everything in one list. You can really easily have your tag, your skirmishers, your link team, your secondary link team. You can just about fit 4 out of 5 things that you would really want in a list. They're fantastic. They've always had a place in my heart. I don't think they've been weakened in the slightest.
In saying that mono build there, really, you're still able to take everything that you
100%
would want to take in that list, though.
Yep.
It's not like there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that's just in this army, but is stuff that you would never even consider.
Yeah. And
as playable.
If you ever see an Acontecimento, you ever see a Shock Army list that drops the tag, you'd be astounded at what can be fit in, and those lists still look real good.
Yeah.
All right, next one, Aleph. I'll go for this one.
Vanilla Aleph?
That is vanilla Aleph, yeah. These guys from me are an A as well. Tristan in the chat, we're doing this on Lost Lieutenant Discord, noted that they reckon that our criteria would heavily favor vanilla factions because of presumably list versatility. And yeah, I think that's true to an extent. I think a lot of vanilla factions are powerful, and I think Aleph is one of them. They've got some great power pieces. They do a whole lot of things. They have significant mechanical versatility. They can play a wide variety of tables. They kind of tick all the boxes. What they maybe miss out on is they have mechanical power, but that mechanical power does come at a cost. You can't just spam units. They don't have warbands. But if you can build an Aleph list that's got tons of wounds, good firepower, good scenario ability, they're a good hacking faction, although maybe they wish they had a little bit more repeater projection. Just a solid A. I maybe would put them a little behind Shock Army, but just there's nothing whatsoever wrong with Aleph. They're a fantastic faction. You can win any tournament with them.
Yeah, and things like the access to not just regular smoke, but is it Eclipse grenades as well?
They do, yep.
And then also post-humans as well. You can't ever discount them. The fact that you can have that many bodies on the table and them soak up orders without actually losing orders when they go down, unless you take them all out, that's phenomenal. And it's because of things like that I'd even put them higher than A. I'd even put them sort of halfway between A and S.
I'm resistant. I'll put my hand on the table here. I'm resistant a little bit to the idea of S factions in Infinity. But
I get that, and you Rob is the one who's controlling the mouse, so he's doing the dragging and dropping. If it was me, I probably would put them at S. But you can put them where you like.
All right, I'm going to put my foot down on that then. We'll see. There's maybe 1 or 2 factions that we can have a real argument about because I think there's a couple that you make the case for. Another vanilla faction, Vanilla Ariadna. What do you reckon for those?
Mate, if you were asking me before the most recent update, there'd be like C or D, in my opinion. But with the addition, all the addition that's come in from the almost revamp of Cosmo, strong A for me.
Yep. Do you reckon above Shock Army and Aleph or below?
Well. Oh, you're putting them in a bit of
yeah, that's in order.
Tier
Yep,
there.
we're doing this granularly.
Oh my goodness. I hadn't even considered from that perspective. You really put the pressure on me. Now I'd put them in between those two.
Yep, fair enough.
Yep.
And
yeah, they have frighteningly good capability of running like double tag. Bears scare everyone at the moment. And they can just do it in a way that in terms of if this was a list of most improved, they would be beyond S tier. But if it's just simple rankings, that's where I'm putting them.
I would put them at the bottom of A, but I'll leave them where they are. The reason for that for me is scenario game for me is really important, and the fact that Ariadna has real pros and cons in mechanical uniqueness, where the joke used to be every other faction has main battle tags, Ariadna has main battle warbands. Dog Warriors and Bear Pods are just like so game defining. These days, Ariadna has main battle tags and multiple of them and main battle warbands. But the fact that they still have no hacking, and that this ranking is being done in ITS Season 13, where hacking is one of the most useful and important things you have, I think those really balance Ariadna out. The fact that, like looking at the Nova Corps missions, for example, where there are 2 or 3 scenarios that just become way easier if you have access to hackers, and Ariadna has to brute force their way through those. 100% think they still can, but that for me, that's always going to hang a little bit over their heads, but I think they are excellent. There's no way we'd put them outside of the A faction, A tier. I just think they're probably in the bottom of it.
Yeah, I mean, swinging back around to the scenario mission side of things. Yes, they do lack on the hacking space, and maybe a little bit when it comes to a variety of specialists as well. But the fact that they do have such strong neck stomping capability does mean you can just easily play the shoot first, push buttons later. Sort of your enemy cannot push a button if you disable his hand type game.
That's a fair point. ITS Season 13 is a scenario list that can, unless you're bringing in scenarios from other seasons, which you can do under the current tournament rules, it is definitely a scenario lineup where you can kind of choose to play every scenario as Annihilation. And Ariadna can choose to go down that path, and they're very strong at it.
Yep.
All right. Bakunin, baby.
Mate, if I was from a different Queensland-based podcast, this is like S+ tier, aren't they?
So for me, and I'm happy to be contradicted here, I reckon Bakunin are a B tier, and that's only because about a third of the faction kind of doesn't work. It's really close though. So I'm torn. Specifically,
I'm happy to put them in B because we need it. We said we're not putting everything in the same tier, so we have to at least have something that's going to.
So post-Fireteam change, Bakunin have really benefited in terms of opening up their list versatility with the Fireteam changes, and that's because Riot Girls are as good as ever. You can't do as easily the Riot Girl moderator link before, the 4 moderators, 1 Riot Girl. But the thing is, Riot Girl core links, just all Riot Girls and things that count as Riot Girls, that's a fantastic heavy core. And the addition of, so there are a few factions that got warband links, where you can link cheap regular warband troops and make them regular. And Bakunin are one of those. And those are actually just like awesome, wonderful Harris teams that are super fun to play with. And the addition of the Taskmaster, Morlock, Harris or duo is something that has really helped Bakunin's list versatility. Doesn't really change any of the things like scenario game, what kind of tables they can play on, or even mechanical power, although it's a point of mechanical uniqueness. But it's just it opens the faction up enough that you can write 2 Bakunin lists that are materially different and both are interesting. You can kind of only write 2 or 3.
That's right, and that's sure you've got 2 that, like you say, are unique, but Can you get more than 2? Probably
Yeah.
not. So
I reckon if they ever make observance, if they go back to Bakunin and they shift observance to be like fun and compelling and interesting, I reckon they'll put Bakunin straight into a strong A. But right now they just don't have quite enough in that space, although the things that they do have are 100% tournament winning.
Yeah, like if you're playing heavily into like if pure links are going to get you off, then this is a great faction for that. But beyond that, I don't think.
I mean, they've got fantastic warbands as well. They've got the boss stock. There's tons of cool. Zeros are perfectly serviceable skirmishers. Brander Castro is awesome. 0 drop troops. But yeah. Okay. I would put them at a high B. What do you reckon for the Caledonian Highlander army?
It's been a long time since I've actually even played anyone who's at Caledonian. I'd probably put them at B just because it's a nice middle ground.
Yep. I have played them actually a fair bit in N4, but I played them before the Link update. And it's actually probably hasn't hurt them horrifically, but it has hurt them. The big thing for Caledonians for me is that in N4, and this is the same before and after the Link update, they're mono build. And the reason they're mono build is that their entire army is cheap as chips. They have like their best troops cost about 25 points. You can take maximum availability of Highlander Greys, who are fantastic for their points cost, and maximum availability of Cameronians, and maximum availability of SAS and Usha McNeil and Wallace, and you can still easily hit 15 troops. And like you begin having to choose between Catarans and your 4th Highlander Grey or your 3rd SAS, but it's literally just there's kind of only one Caledonian list because you run out of troop slots. Now the pieces they have are awesome. SAS are some of the best skirmishers in the game. Dog Warriors are fantastic. Wallace is easily one of the best lieutenants. But they have kind of the same weaknesses that Ariadne does in the scenario game. They do have a hacker. It's fine. But yeah, I would be hesitant to put them outside of a B, although I think if you actually play them and you get a feel for those strengths and the aggression and the like heavy capacity, they're pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Happy with that.
Okay, combined army.
Vanilla combined.
Yeah.
And I'm going to push you on this. I'm putting them S tier because of like on all these factors we're looking at, list build flexibility. You can run them a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
They've got amazing specialists. They work for any type of scenario that you need. Mechanical uniqueness is definitely there.
100%.
And the power as well, top tier.
Yep.
And even beyond power, I would say that the projection of fear and psychology from the opponent's perspective, when your opponent brings combined army to the table, you know you're in for a tough time.
Yeah,
and I think that also goes a long way as well.
I can't really disagree. The fact that we've chosen to do things like mechanically, in terms of mechanical power, I think a lot of combined army profiles, you get what you pay for, but what you get and what you pay is a lot, and what you get is good. I've also been talking to a friend who's new into the game recently, and the observation he made, and that I agree on, is that combined army excel in their most expensive and their cheapest troops, and that is a good place to be. Hitting the high notes and the low notes in the same faction, there is just about nothing. Like there's no, with the Eclipse, they lack Eclipse smoke. That's the closest thing to a toolkit that they're missing, and they have Prothion, no other faction does. They have Sepsitor, no other faction does. Those are incredible mechanics if you get to use them. They have
and the thing where the lieutenants
Memnonica, yep. They have the highest whip native hackers in the game. There are only 3 whip 16 hackers in the game, and combined has all of them. Very, very, very good faction. Yep, versatile, can do many things. One thing I've noticed is that they almost trivially, in ITS Season 13, you have the luxury with combined of building lists for tables or opponents, because if you just build a list and you put some combined army hackers in it and Dr. Worm, cool, you can do every scenario. It doesn't matter, you can do every single scenario. Good job, you can build lists for whatever you want. All right. There's our first S tier. Okay, taking this seriously, actually putting in S tiers despite the fact that it's... So, Tunguska, what do you reckon?
That's Corregidor.
It is Corregidor. I'm looking at the wrong screen. Jurisdictional Commander Corregidor. Post-link change.
You can start off with this one, I think.
I think B.
Really?
I do, yeah. So they got a little bit bodied. So Corregidor was an extremely solved faction before the link change, and we should note that the link change actually came alongside the release of Diabolos and Lobos, or Lobos, who are super cool and interesting. But Corregidor was like homogenous around its use of evaders in links, or what the Corregidor link soup. And it's finding itself again within post link updates. And I don't know if it's I wouldn't want it to reapproach the same solved state that it was in before. Where everything can link with everything, so you just find what the best links are from your choice of everything. But I reckon they're still, the toolkit is incredible. Actually, I would probably put them above. I would move them to there, but I could hear an argument for low A tier. What do you reckon?
I don't disagree with anything that you've said there. I mean, looking at the link team specifically as well, they do have versatility there, but and there is some keywords as well, the Aguacil keyword and correctional keyword, but not enough to really bump up.
They're not.
Pure links
they're not going to hit. They're not going to hit pure link bonuses on a big gun that easily.
Exactly. So yeah, B tier.
And it's worth noting that I say that they got one of the best tags in the game recently, so they're probably doing just fine in terms of firepower.
Yeah,
but anyway,
what's it? The alligator?
The gator. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. The gator.
That is
I have faced off against that, and it's monstrous.
Yeah.
So, maybe put him at the front of B.
Front of B. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Dashat Company.
Before you mention that, sorry, I was actually going to say I have no idea what that symbol is. I don't know what that faction is.
This is Dashat.
Oh, right, okay.
Have you played against Dashat?
Not ever.
Okay. Dashat Company are post-link team update. Dashat Company are still a solid B. They're very, very changed from N3, where they were the 24 order faction, which you can't do anymore.
Right. I mean, they were only around in N3 for like 2 months. And everyone was petrified of them because they could just do everything that N3 was about.
Wanted you to do. Yep.
And but that has definitely changed in N4. Has it changed much since the update, or it's still in the sort of same spot? So
my take on what Dashat Company are in N3 is that they are the best irregular faction in the game, competing basically with Hack Islam. The Dashat Libertos and Coom Riders in ITS Season 13 are so good. That Dashat are an economy faction so remember what I mentioned, Caledonians are the economy faction where you can just easily hit 15. Dashat are the same, but they have access to a tag. And like decent, expensive heavy infantry links. There's a bunch of stuff in Dashat that's a bit kind of like not useful, looking at you, Alpha Seed. And they do tend very lightly towards, they've got basically 2 builds. But the builds, the basis, the core there is good. The reason why I would never put them in an A tier is they've only got so much hacking. They don't have access to any Trinity. And that's significant. Their actual hackers are like basically Valyria, Gromos, and Gulam. But what they have really is that mechanical power. A Mimetism Libertos for 9 points is really, really, really good. It was good in N3, and it's fantastic in N4, and bikers are fantastic as well. Their core of like pokey, skirmishy warband pieces is outstanding, and they have a tag at the top end to complement everything. Okay. Yep. Drew's Bayram Security.
Put him down at D, mate.
I don't reckon they're a D. I reckon they're bottom of C.
They're that bad.
Yeah. So there's only the spoiler. There's only one faction I think actually fits in D, and we'll get to them at some point soon. The thing that salvages Drew's for me is notably about Drew's, mechanically a weak faction. There are a lot of profiles.
There's nothing really unique about what they do in that respect.
There's exactly one thing they do that no other faction can do, and that is give core link bonuses to an X-Visor EM grenade launcher, which now they're the only faction that can do that. And I reckon you could probably you could probably fight your way through a tournament like 4 rounds out of 5 with that, because it's something that a lot of people in the current meta are not going to be prepared for. But it's like one gimmick, and the rest of Druze is super expensive. They can still do everything. Like, no faction that has peacemakers is ever peacemaker singular is ever going to go all the way down to a D, because that piece is incredible. Their hacking is fine. They have linkable guided missile bots. They can core link and give core link bonuses to the grenade launcher. Yeah, and they've got Scarface, and they've got linkable Scarface, actually. Like, there's enough there that you can, like, scrape together a list and be like, this is fine. This is doable, but they're hard.
And, like, I mean, the Druze themselves as well. They've got like they do have amazing toolbox profiles with
a lot of points,
pictures, and all sorts of things. So if countermeasures is your is the thing you're looking at as your mission, they can integrate that into their regular builds. Easily, but is that enough to bring them up? I don't think.
I think it is. I think it puts. I don't think they're like. I don't know how many people will actually have in the C tier, but we might have one coming up soon. But I think Druze are in the bottom of the C tier. But there's a bit of a legacy, like in terms of people. People remember them in N4, where unlimited troop count just made a mockery of them.
And in N3.
Oh, N3, sorry, yeah. But in N4, where everyone is playing like 15 troops, Druze can play in that space, and the things that they want to prey on play in that space. I think they've got a bit more to them. Not a lot, mind you, but they've got a bit more to them than people necessarily think. But I would say bottom of the C's.
Yeah. Up next, foreign company.
Foreign company. I think they are a C, and they're above Druze Bayram.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
The thing for me about Foreign Company is that it's a matter of mechanical limitations. It fights. The Link Team update didn't really hinder or didn't really hurt, but it's a faction that tries to do. You look at individual things Forco can do, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Look at that link. That's awesome. How many points is that? Oh, it's a lot." It's a lot. Can I fill the rest of my list out? No, not really. The individual, unique, and powerful stuff, yeah, there's some stuff in there, but you pay a premium, probably more for it than it's worth pretty consistently.
Yeah, exactly. Like they do that expensive stuff is good, and like the Forco link is a nice link with all that extra stuff you can put in there, but then what else is there?
I'd have if Kriza Borak were as good as they were in N3, I'd shunt them up higher for the strength of that. But like Forco don't even have their Forco's gunfighting is kind of limited to doing some stuff with their remotes, and then of course bolts are really good, but yeah, it's a challenge.
And I mean, a linked orc is never something to shy about.
It's okay. That's true. All right, Hack Islam Vanilla.
A tier.
Yep. You reckon, where does it sit relative to the ones we've got there already?
First or second? Probably second, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. It's really close though. They're a very good faction. They have some notable limitations, but they have great tools for overcoming those limitations. Actually, almost like Vanilla Hack Islam is one of the most enjoyable factions to play, because you're posed problems and given the tools to deal with them in a way that's just satisfying. Like it's fun to engage with that in list building and on the table. They've got like Fidei, they've got actually surprisingly serviceable hacking. Hack Islam are one of the low-key better hacking factions in the game thanks to the existence of Barids. Like they've got super economy hacking. Their guided missile bot is also cheap for some reason. They've got fantastic irregulars, maybe a little bit less than Dashat, but still really good. The Dalami is fantastic. They've got Libertos and Bikers and Zolekia. What they obviously lack is long-range firepower dominance. Their tags are... Remember when the Shakush, the profile was spoiled, and we all thought, holy shit, this is incredible. And actually it's just kind of a good heavy infantry. And the Maggie is a bit overcosted. So and those are their tools for fighting outside of 24 inches. But you have ways.
When you look at the low end of the spectrum, they fill it out really nicely.
Oh, yeah.
Like Dalami in particular, as ARO pieces even. your Panzerfaust and that sort of thing.
In Season 13, I've actually moved away from Delamy in favor of Bikers because the buff that Bikers got was so strong.
Quite strong.
A 6-point rider is like, even as an ARO piece, watching people try and kill those things is hilarious. But yeah, definitely very, very good faction. And combination of mechanical, they have mechanical uniqueness that substitutes for mechanical power. I would say it's easy to build a Hack-Islam list that can be defeated by the table if the table is crap. And that's always a risk that you run when you go to an event, that you'll just like, oops.
You mean just like stupidly open sort of thing?
Yeah, it's like, someone's built a parking lot. This seems to have been a mistake. And, you can do your bet. Like, Assassin for days can bridge the gap, etc. They can only go so far. So, 100% a tournament-winning faction, like, well and regularly, but not without limitations.
All right. Assassin Bayram.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on this one?
So, I think they are at the bottom of the A tier or the top of the B tier. They are kind of just... They used to be Hack-Islam with no bikes but links. But no bikes matters a lot more than it used to. And the links kind of matter less because their link teams are kind of fairer now. You don't get the same like, just going to put Asawira in everything. Well, actually, you still do that, but you don't get core link bonuses as easily. So the availability of Asawira is a unique mechanical strength because Asawira are incredible for their cost. But I actually think I put them below vanilla very gently, like maybe something like that, just because I rate access to vanilla Hack-Islam's bikers super high.
Yeah, and like for me, in terms of the list build flexibility, I personally don't think it's there to put it on par with the other A tiers, so I would put it at the front of B.
Okay. No, that's fair. Actually, yeah, they're not exactly monobuild. What you get with vanilla Assassin, so with Assassins, is you start seeing the interesting flex in like the last 60 points you spend on a list, where it's things like Assassin Nadirs or reaching for the third Fidei Jabel or like that kind of stuff. Running an Arabian Nights list where you've got the maximum availability of Asawira. But if you're not doing that already in every list, which you might be doing. But yeah, that's a point. They tend to be a little samey. Your opponents will usually know what to expect.
Sure. So are you leaving him in A or at the front end of B?
Front end of B is fine. Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Next we have Ikari Company. What do you think?
Look, I've only played Akari once. Since N4 came out, actually, it was before the changes. I'd probably rank them pretty low, maybe C.
I think they're either top of C or bottom of B. I would have, before the Fireteam change, I would have ranked them more highly. But the Fireteam, and it's not the end of the world. But they have to. One of the the Kosotsu are realistically their only core apart from Wuming, and you can build a Wuming list, and it's pretty serviceable. But otherwise, it's like you have to run a Kosotsu core, and you put a gun in it, and that gun is worse now, and that's significant. As much as the whole rest of Akari is solid forward gears, you've got Desperados, which are one of the best bikers in the game, alongside Coom Riders and any of the character bikes. You've got access to Yojimbo, you've got Scarface, who is a fantastic tag for cost, and you've got the Tanko Diokai link, which is obviously unchanged as a Haris and is great.
They do get trip hammers now, and they also get diggers.
Yeah, those are okay. Diggers were a big splash in the pan, but having now played with them a bunch, it's like, yeah, no, these are fine. They're good for 14 points. The big thing that holds... So Ikari used to compensate for... So what Ikari don't have is particularly good scenario game. Akari, a little bit like how vanilla Ariadne can sometimes be, are an every scenario is annihilation if you try hard enough faction. And Akari are that. It's even baked into their background, where they are, they are formed because JSA wouldn't let Colonel Akari do enough war crimes. They're an angry, aggressive faction. They're very forward gears. They don't use Yan-Yans anymore because Yan-Yans are kind of unfortunately bad now. But Desperados are incredible. Pick up the slack. Tankos are awesome, but it's all aggressive and aggro stuff. And they used to they've just I think it's been a drop from a B to a C with the link team change, just because a BS14 Tanko is not as good as a BS16 Tanko, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, totally.
All right, Invincible Army.
Invincible Army, I would put Invincible Army at A tier.
Okay.
They have some great units, and the main reason that I'm putting them at A is because it's real easy to get 20 orders that you're spending. Maybe not quite 20, but you get access to NCO and tactical awareness the NCO combined with Lieutenant level 2, Lieutenant plus 1 order, it just means that they can be so efficient. I wouldn't put them at the top of A because when those things that are giving you that extra efficiency, like the NCO models and your tactical awareness models, when they go down, instead of just losing one, or you're losing 2 or 3 some of the time, that does hurt it. And I think it does have the flexibility there as well. Maybe not so much as some of the other ones up here, particularly the other vanilla factions. But you're always going to get more flexibility out of vanilla. That's my opinions on Invincible.
I'll leave them there because that's a perspective that I value. But I would have put them lower. Like I would put them probably below the Nomad sectorals in B tier at minimum, and just because Invincible Army kind of does exactly one thing. I've seen some Invincible lists that like deviate in interesting ways, but it feels like it's the heavy infantry plus orders faction, and if you know how to deal with that, if you've got a list that can engage that comfortably, that can stitch them up good and properly. But you make some solid points about mechanical power, and actually, in the scenario game has gotten like surprisingly solid. With the addition of all of the like veteran, specialist, NCO, linkable pieces with Lieutenant plus 2 order. I'm honestly a bit reticent about the A tier, but let's leave them there. But I would say definitely
they are a lot more flexible since the link team changes, because they have so much stuff with the invincible keyword.
Yep.
And then also the list of wildcards is as long as your arm. So you have an invincible core, and then you have a nice little toolbox Harris that can do whatever you want it to do.
That's actually kind of a point. The water level has lowered around them while they have stayed the same. The fact that they can still their ability to wildcard is a little diminished. Like I think Hideout, for example, don't count as invincibles. But the fact that they can link relatively cheap invincibles plus Shang-Chi, plus the characters, means that they have kept the Uber core when lots of other factions have lost it. The strong invincible links have stayed strong, and some of their competitors and predators have maybe fallen back just a little bit. So, okay, all right. I'd personally rank them lower, but let's leave them there because I think that's a cool take. ISS, what do you reckon?
Look, the ISS was like the first army that I've played, and so it pains me to put them here. But like, I'm thinking high C or low B.
Let's go low B. I think in the post-Fireteam update.
Yeah, that's fair. They have a whole bunch of things going for them, but some of the things that they've got going for them don't necessarily mean that much. Like they have huge access to visors, like Biomed visors, MSV 1 and 2, but that stuff only comes into play if your opponent is showing you the things that negates, right?
Yep.
They can build a lot of orders, but they can almost build too many orders. Like because they have the huge access to Quang Shi, but then you've still got to fill out the points somewhere. They got no tags in an environment that is so tag heavy. and not a huge amount of particularly long range stuff. Luna's nice as a sniper, and your what's that guy called? The
Sand Warrior?
yeah, Shen. That as well, but apart from that, there's not much else there that's particularly good at long range. They have no midfield presence, apart from the Garuda drop troop, which I wouldn't even call a midfield presence as a drop troop. It's a different thing.
I would argue that a Sujan is midfield presence in one order, and it's enemy deployment zone presence the next. No faction with Sujan can ever be truly terrible. But no, I think that's fair. I'm actually, maybe I have Army open in a separate window and I'm like refreshing myself on their fire teams now. They look, so I would have probably have ranked them like mechanically powerful but not versatile, like low C, high C, low B before. But actually, there are some interesting fire teams that they can take, like the existence of the Aleph support fire team, but even just Dakini plus Celestial Guard is actually like, is there something there as a team? Because a Dakini with Evo hacker bonuses plus like a little bit, it's not going to be a pure link.
And we talked about, on our most recent episode of Lost Lieutenant, we actually took a deep dive into all the using sectorals. So we kind of put that Celestial Guard with Dakini, where the Dakini is the gun piece, you buff it with the Evo, that's sort of where you're at. And the fact that you are able to buff it with the Evo hacker kind of negates the fact that you're not pure, so you're not getting that +3 ballistic skill, but that's okay because you're ignoring cover. And the other links are nice as well. The Aleph support group is a real nice toolbox. The Wu Ming is still decent if you want to go for a pain train, and the Law and Order fire team is like really interestingly flexible to look at, and there's a lot there, but you're not getting any pure bonuses anywhere really.
Yep. I think
attack fire team as well. So, I'm talking myself into putting him even higher, maybe high B. This fast attack fire team's real cute as well.
It is pretty neat. Yeah, well, I mean, a Sujan duo, I think, is less powerful than the duos that you can do with a Sujan in vanilla Yuching. But a Sujan duo sort of pales in comparison to a Sujan duoed with Crit Cockram or a Shang-Chi with Timbot attack awareness. But we'll get to that apparently very last faction. I think right now the mechanical strength in ISS is still like unevenly distributed, where there are pieces that are really good at like one specific thing or like one specific role, or like a Sujan is terrifying if you don't have a means of defending against it or it finds a hole in your defenses.
But the thing is, in the today's meta where everyone's worried about tags, so everyone's taking hackers, that's the same thing for a Sujan. Sujan don't like hackers either.
Yep. Kind of, yep, 100%. And yeah, basically, what I'm getting at there is that they're certainly more interesting, and they've got more list versatility than they did before the Fire Teams update. And I think that's helped them more than harmed them. Certainly, like just being a more interesting faction that can build more lists is genuinely it is an advantage in events, because if your opponent knows. If your faction only has cookie cutter builds, then you're very easy to deploy and play against because your opponent knows what to prepare for. But if you've got like, I don't know what does ISS look like now? ISS can build X different kind of lists. Oh, I didn't expect the Aleph support link. What will that do to the game? That's an advantage. But I think they're still unevenly distributed. The fire teams, although they're interesting, don't necessarily have they don't live off the pages like this is raw strength. No, they live off the pages like that's worth investigating. Let's see how it is.
I agree.
The absence of a tag and kind of like vaguely uneven long range weapons, I think keeps them back for things like scenario game and table game. It keeps them back in the B tier, probably in the bottom of the B tier, but I wouldn't be surprised if we revisited this in hindsight in X months time and we'd had a couple of games. We might be like, no, actually.
Because like you said before, how there's the link teams, there's nothing that jumps out there, but it's like these are interesting and need further investigation. Yep. But so in the future, it may change.
All right, Rama Task Force.
What are your thoughts on Rama?
I think they are a really good in post-Fireteam update. They're a really good B faction.
Okay.
I don't know where they sit really closely alongside Assassins, Corregidor, and Bakunin. This kind of bracket here, where the presence of Xeoden fire teams linking with Ghulam's, like those fire teams have improved in their composition in the sense that they're easier to make now. It's still a faction that can't warband for shit and is full of single wound models that are hoping for a doctor. But it's gone from Rama has gone from being kind of a bad meme to actually just there's the mechanical strength has emerged. Be it burst 5, damage 15, hitting on 18s is at heavy machine gun range bands. That's really good.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the like in terms of the tag game, still just a Maggie, which is
fine.
Great.
It's perfectly
and
serviceable.
So there's a few things that are holding him back from A, but no, happy to put him at high.
Yep. Yeah, they are still a little bit like the problem that Rama used to have was that they were a shit version of Pan-Oceania, and now they're kind of an okay and interesting version of Pan-Oceania, which is good enough to be solid. I think we'll put them in here between the Nomad factions.
Cool.
All right, JSA. Fuck.
I'm thinking high B.
Yeah.
High B.
Yep.
Same place as maybe below Rama. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, probably.
Where you've got them, I'm happy with that. They're like in terms of list flexibility. I like to talk about the capabilities of what they can do first in terms of tables and scenarios. I think they have that. Sure, they don't have access to drop troops, but they have good midfield and
any faction with only Warband
as well.
Yeah, anyone with only Warband can get by without drop troops.
That's right, exactly. I don't think the list building flexibility is there, but they do have bikes, and bikes are real good at the moment, and the Japanese bikes are also very good already. So, mechanical uniqueness. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so JSA. Let me just step back a little bit and talk about the impact of the Fireteam change on JSA. So at the very beginning of N4, JSA were an unholy terror because people built link teams full of samurai and yeeted them across the battlefield, and it was so many wounds, moving so quickly and so effectively into your face that it was just like, with stealth, no less, to bypass that kind of like nascent hacking defense people were experimenting with at the beginning of the edition. That it was just like JS, and also because we were all still learning how to attack and defend, and in that environment, attacking lists have the advantage because they learn first. JSA was considered so strong, and I think, frankly, those strengths stand. The Fireteam update has nominally nerfed their core link because the guns that you might put in that list, you can actually build an all Damaru link, but Tanko are the super cost-effective pieces that make that heavy assault work. So it's a question of the gun in a JSA Samurai core is going to be either, depending on your preference, a Damaru or a BS-12, sorry, a Damaru Spitfire or a Daiokai weapon of choice. And that piece will have probably lost 2 points of ballistic skill as a result of the Fireteam change. But I think changing them, like so significantly saying, oh, JSA are bad now based on that, overlooks the fact that that gun was always a complement to the actual strength, which is incredibly aggressive, dangerous, delivering Tanko to shotgun range.
Yeah. I am kind of surprised that the Damaru link does not all have like a Damaru keyword.
Yeah, it's samurai keyword. Yeah, it's surprising that they chose not to do that.
Something like that. I can kind of see why they didn't do it though, because that wasn't like before the changes. That was a very, very, very powerful piece that you had to contend with. So
yeah, and in terms of the rest of the faction, definitely there are like some other factions. The JSA hacking game is weak enough that it's kind of like difficult to use. They don't really have like repeater projection. They are all about this like core set of really strong mechanical strengths, which tend to be focused around the samurai, and then the Oniwaban are the complement to that when your meta is one in which the Oniwaban are a problem to a solution to a problem that you need solved. So if the meta must always be hostile to tags, if you are finding that you are having trouble like progressing forward under like tag AROs and tag firepower, then the Oniwaban come out and they solve that problem for you. So I think still strong, little bit of a mono build. That mono build is still good despite the link team change.
Yep. Okay. Cosmoflot.
Good faction.
Next cab off the rank. I'm going to put him at A tier.
Yep, above or below Vanilla Ariadne, do you reckon? Because it's going to be very close.
Yeah. I'd put him above just because I feel like the link bonuses that you're getting is there is some nice links in there, and there's a few with the like Rocket keyword as well is nice.
The Volcolac, yep.
Yeah, exactly. The Volcolac and patches as well as wildcards. That those bonuses put them over the top of what you're getting from vanilla. So
yeah, I've played. So for me, if this was a list of factions that I am good with rather than factions that I think are good, I would probably put Vanilla Ariadne above Cosmoflot because I am a vanilla player. I'm not fantastic with links. But setting that aside, if you look at a good Cosmoflot list and a good Ariadne list, there is going to be not 100%, but a lot of overlap there. And Cosmoflot, if you're a sectoral that's in the position of like vanilla but with links, that's a good place to be. Assassins are like that, for example, despite the fact that we've ranked them a fair bit apart from Vanilla Hack, and that's because of the bike changes. And so, yeah, the Volcolac, actually a bit of a sleeper, maybe even not a sleeper. People may know this is good. The Volcolac in a Rocket core is excellent, and actually the missile launcher Volcolac is something that I would not be surprised if we see more and more of. I've had games where the total immunity on those bastards just like stalled me out trying to fight it conventionally for an entire turn. And the missile launcher just makes that like a critical failure state the second you lose a face-to-face roll. So you combine that with the fact that they have the Chernobog and the Unknown Ranger who can be in a link. Unknown Ranger is still a great piece. They have SAS, which are I was ranting about how wonderful SAS are. They've got the full suite of capabilities because they're kind of the like modern Ariadne army. They've got perfectly serviceable airborne, great skirmishers. By Ariadne standards, there is even some hacking. Again, it's not much. They will have that same weakness where in a scenario pack that so strongly likes hackers in so many scenarios, they're always going to be at least at the bottom of the A tier. But there's good stuff going on there.
Yeah. And easily the best Ariadne sectoral, and on par with vanilla.
Yeah. Toha.
Mate, trash. Toha trash. Always have been, always will be.
So I reckon they're somewhere in the A or B tier. And it's kind of hard to say.
Unlimited Harris has to put them, has to give them, which is what you used to call them triads. It's ridiculous. But still, I don't think there's that much flexibility in terms of whenever I play, you play Toha, so you know this more than I do. But I feel like even though whenever I play against a Toha player, I have no idea what they have told me is in their army because everything sounds the same, even and they're all these strange alien words. But I still feel like I always face the same stuff.
So there's a bit of a phenomenon there where yes, because Toha, like a lot of Toha pieces share. The Toha as a faction is made unique by so much transmutation and like symbiote things and stuff. It can feel often how it feels to play against Toha if you aren't familiar with them is a strange and confusing experience every time. From within the faction, I can say actually no, there are a variety of different ways to play Toha depending on what parts of them you want to emphasize. And actually, I would go as far as to say that Toha are almost an anti-meta faction. With like one or two exceptions, there is no individual thing in the game that you can't build a Toha list to trash. You just got to know what it is you're about to fight. And like, so for example, if tags rise in supremacy, Toha can wheel out a list that apart from basically the avatar and the cutter actually even is fine, it's basically just the avatar. Apart from the avatar, Toha can shit on tag-centric lists. They can close assault like champions. They have horrifically dangerous impersonators. They have good infiltrators, but they have Eclipse Smoke, and because they have Eclipse Smoke everywhere, they can always control the battlefield, which makes up for the fact that they have like BS13 is their highest ballistic skill stat anywhere, excepting the Gorgos, and the Gorgos is unfortunately a little bit bad. So but they don't have hacking, and if you're in an environment like in the ITS season 13, would really be good to have like the Kamale hacker is not enough. If there was like a Sukail commando killer hacker profile, that would be like aces high. That would be really good. That would like all of a sudden Toha, comfortable somewhere in the top of the A's. But in the absence of that, in the absence of like a repeater network, other than what you can place with deployables, etc., I still think they sit somewhere in the A tier, and that if nothing else, that is purely off of the back of mechanical uniqueness that is so distinct that playing against Toha is a confusing experience for many players.
Yep. No, I'm
that
with
that will carry you through games. If your opponent has to stop and say, "Sorry, just remind me what a symbio bomb does," you're like, "I've got this." Game advantage.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. The French Merovingians.
Well, yeah, right there. D tier is where it's at. French are expensive. They have heavy infantry who aren't actually even 2 wounds or even 1.5. They're 1 wound heavy infantry. That costs a lot. I know people don't like to compare across faction, but if you are comparing, it's exactly what we're doing right now. Comparing across faction point for point, they don't win ever on when you're looking at things point for point.
Yeah. Sheer, just about everything is against the poor French, and it starts with just sheer mechanical weakness. Their pieces are just weak for their cost, consistently. Paratroopers are good. This ends my list of things that are good about French. Even Chasseurs used to be so strong, but with the changes to Sixth Sense in N4, Sixth Sense no longer being the weird bullshit that it was, they can't even hang their head on that. And if you want to play Margot and Duroc, you can do it in 2 better armies. So yeah, unfortunately, I use French pieces in vanilla Ariadna, but French as a sectoral are they're just playing them puts you behind the 8 ball in a big way.
Yep, definitely.
All right, the monkeys.
Morats. Yeah, monk together strong.
Yep.
Definitely A tier.
I agree. They
middling, probably middle. Right there, that's fine.
Yep.
And this was, I guess, even controversial when the update came out. Is that like, here's this new thing with pure versus mixed links. You can't mix and match whatever you like. Oh, unless you pay more.
Unless you're playing monkeys. Yep.
To pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna stop and say for like a hot minute. I like narratively that Morats can fire team together so effectively because their like backstory is that they are a fully militarized society.
And I totally agree. It's not even like they're a professional military like the Invincible Army, for example. This is a step further, right? They're like the Klingons of Infinity in that they live and breathe.
Their whole society is oriented around a collective military effort. Anyway, so that aside, have you played with Morats much or against them much?
Yeah, I have. I actually played against Morats on Wednesday night this week, and yeah, there's a killer hacker. There's a regular hacker that's got Trinity upgrade. I can't remember
the Dartok Cyber Bullies or whatever that Cyber Warriors.
That's amazing.
They're so good. Yes.
And so they were in my Blue Wolf list. They were the priority target number 1 to take out. And yeah, things even what's his name? The guy who's like the
Kornak Gazarot.
Kornak's great. Is it continuous damage?
No, he's just got a big gun.
Oh, he's just got a big gun. No, there's another guy who has like a Vulcan shotguns.
They're all over the
A
place.
weapon
Yeah.
that are all over the place, and continuous damage is crazy.
So for me, if I played, I think I've had about 12 games with Morats now, and they tick so many of the boxes. They post update, they can build lists that are genuinely like they've got multiple interesting list builds, depending on where you want to emphasize what it is that you're using. They have multiple like interesting firepower pieces. They even have multiple interesting tags. So, for example, you compare the two tags in Aconte Cemento, there is less versatility in Morats than in a Conti, but it's still like there, which is rare. And the existence, in particular, the existence of Dartox, the cyber warfare team, as a linkable troop in like any of these fire teams, means that the scenario game is opened up massively for Morats as well. That like Pitcher Trinity, good Trinity, BTS 6 dogged hacking device means that you don't necessarily want to build like a missile list with Morats because it's just whip 13. It's kind of easy to fail spotlights, but you can build a list that hacks just casually. In addition to maybe you have a heavy infantry focus, maybe you have a tag and warband focus, and you always have enough orders to execute a game plan and like push through. The only thing that keeps them from being at the top, like they are a middling to low A, and the reason for that is that their mechanical power is still constrained. The Morat rule you are still paying for on every trooper, and it is expensive, and a lot of their like cool pieces are ballistic skill 12. Now they're 12 with link bonuses, so like the Yaugat sniper will be rolling 15s to hit. The Kaitok assault regiments will be rolling 15s to hit. While they have cool link bonuses, but when those link bonuses go away, you're looking for like 12s and 13s again all of a sudden. Still fantastic faction. Like everything about them, I like so many things about them. The fact that they have no camouflage, that's totally okay. They are still very versatile inside that like direct military assault role. Love them. Super fun, by the way. Super fun faction.
Yeah. Cool. What's this next one? Military orders. Why don't you kick us off with your MO thoughts?
I think they are probably quite close to JSA, somewhere around here.
And I feel like the similarities to JSA, comparing like the Knights link to your Samurai link, is pretty analogous.
In different ways, like they fight very differently. As military orders, you can't do the same thing JSA does, where you take sort of like your 17-point warband troopers in heavy armor and sort of smash them forward, which is weird because I feel like you should be able to, but the big difference.
You could do that.
Oh no, you can, but it doesn't for whatever reason it doesn't work as well with Pan-Oceania. Part of that is they're not 6-2 move nearly as often. There are a lot more 4-4 knights, and the big thing I think that probably just puts military orders behind JSA is that the order generating backbone of the list is hard to find in military orders. JSA hit 15 orders, piece of piss. They've got 9-point infantry, 9-point line infantry to fill you out if you need to. Military orders have got no such luxury. They start at like 13-point, I think, line infantry, and they get a single Fugazi. It's hard to. It's uncomfortable writing military orders lists, even if the individual pieces are strong.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
So, like, mechanical strength is 100% present. There are some things going on, particularly post-Fireteam update. There are still things you can do in military orders where it's like, particularly if you just kind of dispense with. So this is a thing that's changed. Military order links are more flexible now. If you dispense with keywords, and frankly, still can build good lists if you want to stick to keyworded pure fire teams. There is more to explore than there was before, but yeah, that fundamental problem of holy shit, it'd be nice to have AVA 3 Fugazi. That literally would be the change that would catapult them to the top of the bees.
Yep.
All right, Neoterra.
Neoterra, I just think they're just in general a very boring faction. And because, regardless of whatever they have going for them, because they're boring, I would put them at the high B.
I'm going to argue with this one. I think they're an A faction.
Really?
Yeah, so where to start? they're Pan-Oceania in an edition where tags are good, and they have Squalos, and they have Bolt Link teams, and they have Aleph assets that are genuinely interesting, and they have Swissguard, and they have XYZ. I think Neoterra are probably, like, for example, where Aconto are one of those factions that is the top of the A's, Neoterra are not, but there are things that Neoterra does, even post Fireteam updates, that are just strong, interesting, and unique. The existence of peacemakers in the same faction as Bolt hackers are weirdly good, and they have Deva hackers as well, which are no running cap with 15. Just for example, Swiss Guard hackers are even a surprisingly strong and robust piece that you can fit into a list alongside other elements, because that backbone of Neoterra is good. And because we're talking about hackers, like, hey, it's Pan-Oceania with like surprisingly playable hackers, and AVA2 peacemakers, which are like Morans but kind of more dangerous in an assault role.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. If you've got those, you take 2 peacemakers, you've got them in your midfield, and they're not just repeaters, right?
Yeah,
they're also
they're repeaters that are a horrifying close assault piece.
Yeah.
Which are like a Moran is a very pure midfield repeater pain in the ass with the Crazy Koala. The Peacemaker is you give up a bit of deployment with a forward deployment 8, but a Peacemaker, if you don't contest its advance, Peacemaker will come across the table and kick your ass.
But even in a defensive role, if you're trying to get past it, not only are you trying to get past a hacking net, but you're also trying to get past a heavy flamethrower
and a heavy shotgun. Yep. So the backbone of Neoterra is strong. I'm down with, they are kind of like 70% a bit of a boring faction, but if big numbers excite you, then Neoterra is 100% a good faction, and the things that they do that are strong are good to have be strong right now. So I would certainly put them above Invincible Army. They're around that like Tohar area in the space.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Vanilla Nomads,
mate. For the same reasons that Combined Army is S tier, Vanilla Nomads are also S tier.
Do you think they are above or below Combined?
I would say below.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And that's off the back of mechanical uniqueness, I think.
Yeah, and we haven't rated any of the other. It's funny because we haven't rated any of the Nomad sectorals particularly highly, but the Vanilla cherry picks all the best parts, right, and just puts them together in a way that really works really well.
Yep. Puppet Bots, Uberfell Commando, all of the Nomad tags, which are good. Like, Nomads have got 2.5 really great tags. The pieces in Nomads collectively that are good coincidentally make a fantastic vanilla faction. Yeah, I agree. I have taken Nomads to a tournament, have won. They pull together really well. They do missions like an absolute dream. I put Zoe and Pywell in a list because they're a 0 SWC hacker, and hey, coincidentally, I now don't have to worry about countermeasures. I can do like every mission easily. So yeah, very, very strong. Maybe very slightly behind Combined Army, just because Combined Army do many of the same things, but also have random shit that nobody else has.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's comfortable. So, 012.
I'll let you lead on that one because I simply don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I think they are somewhere around here. So they've certainly got, like, you can build 012 lists that are good and do strong things. And for that reason, they can't be below a B.
Mm-hmm.
But they still don't feel like a complete faction. And a lot of the pieces that are in 012 are very kind of obviously cautious design. Sometimes you see factions where it's like, holy shit, profile optimization. That thing is amazing. You've just slapped Frenzy on it and made it linkable. And there's not much of that in 012. There's plenty of things that are good, and you can build a very competent list that can do lots of different things. But like a Zeta, for example, it's a good tag. It's expensive. Climbing Plus is good. HRMC is good. Armor 8 is like, it's good. It's a good tag.
They have a very strong hacking game as well.
They do, but they pay more for it than a lot of the so for example, serious teams are kind of, if you think about like a peacemaker that's less offensively geared, that's a serious team. And that offensive gearing on a peacemaker is what makes it such a strong piece. Whereas you have the serious bot is an adhesive weapon rather than a flame weapon, and then the serious herself often is a hacker, which is great. It means it's like self-contained, but it also means it's expensive. It's like I would say like 26 points for the serious hacker profile.
And I guess as well, rather than you just having a repeater in midfield, having your actual hacker up there,
you have to put her behind the. It's fine. Like you deploy that unit with the serious bot forward, 25 points. You deploy that unit with the serious bot forward and the serious hacker behind, so that they have to engage the serious bot first. But then even then, you have the situation where like if you close assault the serious bot with something, does the hacker not ARO? Actually, for full clarity, I think serious teams are fantastic. Gangbusters are much less good than they used to be. There's tons of like solid good stuff in 012, but the sheer mechanical strength, no, they're good. They are a good faction that can do many good things, which I think puts them comfortably in like the B tier without quite having the holy shit, that one thing that's incredible and unique.
Sure.
All right.
Onyx
Contact Force. Yeah. I would have put these guys low B, and then the Fireteam update came out, and Joth Tithe went and took them to a BrizCon and kicked everyone's ass. And then I went and reevaluated them.
We did a combined army deep dive on the fire teams as well. I like the fire team composition. I think there's a lot there you can work with. But then you've also got Noctifiers, which I think are AVA 3.
I think they're at least 2, which is the most you would usually want.
So, I mean, I'd put them at the bottom of A.
Okay. Above, you reckon above,
like... Put them,
I still feel like,
Rama and...
something like that?
Around there, yep.
Okay. I still feel that there are mechanical... So they're another example of those factions where you have mechanical strength that compensate interestingly for mechanical weaknesses. And like they don't have a main battle tag. Their fire team consists of ballistic skill 11 models, albeit remotes. But like the fact that you can use an Evo hacker to buff their remotes turns Unidrons on. The biggest changes, so they've got much more comfortably flexible fire teams than they used to, which is really good. Like in terms of playability of Onyx, the fire team update opened it up hugely, as did the addition of that NCO engineer, which is really nice. So I still like they are.
So what you're saying is that has moved them from the bottom of B to
B. I think the fire team changes shifted them from like here to somewhere like that, and it's no surprise to me that, like, for example, Josh, Queensland player, phenomenal player, very good. No surprise that he took them to an event and won. Because if you are anywhere in like this bracket and you're a good player, like if you're playing an army that we've said is somewhere between S and C, and you go to an event, like unless you are literally playing, if you're playing anything A, B or S and you won an event, I'll say, yep, that doesn't surprise me at all. You're a good player and that's a good faction.
Yeah.
If someone had said like Ikari Company won an event, I wouldn't say, oh, that's weird. I would say, what was the mission lineup? And if someone said French won an event, I would be like, who was the player?
Yeah. Julian took French to a newbie tournament or something.
Yeah. Who were the players?
He actually did a couple months ago. So.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's that. Onyx are a more explorable space. They still have some limitations. Those limitations are interesting, and there's mechanical power to make up for it.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's cool.
Vanilla Pano.
Well, Vanilla Pano took out BrizCon, so that puts him in S tier, doesn't it?
No.
Yeah, prove me wrong.
That was so. Who was the player, Nick? Who was the player?
It was Hector. Hector is S tier. So
I feel something like maybe this or maybe this, and I don't. that's either bottom of A or middle of B, and that's a wide disparity. But I specifically, it's I have a hard time reading Pano. They don't. Joan of Arc is excellent, and all of their tags are good. They've never been stronger in terms of making a Joan of Arc list work. But I don't know what your second list after that is. Except evidently, I mean, Hector can take anything. Hector can take the weirdest fucking list to an event and win with it, and you're like, oh yeah, Hector does that. He just plays things that are different to everyone else and then wins. I don't know. I'm literally torn between bottom of A off of the back of like that like one or two powerful mechanically strong lists and like middle of B for the exact same reason. Does anyone in the chat have an opinion on this?
That's right.
Someone post something, because this is a hard read for me.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the same, and I'm lukewarm on Pano in general. But I mean, they still like ballistic skill 15 is prolific. Which has got to account for something.
The choice of it's like the thing. The choice of tags is strong, but you can play any of the sectorials and have like one of those really good tags.
And get the same.
All right, here's this for me. Headchime says he plays non-Joan lists and they feel good. Okay, cool. That's enough for me to put him in the bottom of A.
Okay.
I trust that opinion, even though he said top of B, split the difference. No, we're not Wisdom of Solomoning in this. That's a good read. If someone who knows Pano tells me that non-Joan lists are viable and good, cool. There we go. All right, operations subsection OSS.
OSS definitely A tier. I'd put them probably mid to high.
No, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yep, somewhere like they I think they feel roundabout Cosmoflot and Morats. It's like somewhere in this.
I think they were very good prior to the link update, and then with the link update, hasn't changed them.
Yep, no.
You're still taking the same things. The things you were taking before, like your Dakini, are still getting the bonuses for being a core. Your Asura in its little 3-man can still get the bonuses.
I don't actually think. Yeah, I'm going to go on record here and say I don't think you should ever harass an Asura, but you should still take Asuras commonly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Giving up Cybermask is not worth +1 burst. Basically. Anyway, that's me on a separate point.
Cybermask?
Yeah, it's a hacking device plus.
Oh, I thought only killer hackers had Cybermask.
No, HD Plus has that as well.
I need to learn how to play this game.
She's an apex predator, man. So one of the interesting things about OSS is that they're a little bit monobuild in that often the first 60% of an OSS list looks the same. Because Dakini Fireteam, cool. More Dakini Fireteams now if you want. They can harass, I believe. Evo Hacker because you're taking Dakinis. Posthumans because Posthumans are still fantastic. And cool. I've just taken 10 troops. Let's put in some whatever their flash pulse bots are called, and then figure out the last 3 slots. But those last 3 slots are like interesting and relevant. You can put your choice of lieutenant. You only have a couple, but they're good. Your choice of how heavily to invest in hacking compared to other things. If anything, they're SWC constrained. But even then, like the Asurus as a lieutenant versus the Shukra as a lieutenant is a super interesting choice. The Asurus is good, expensive, and I wouldn't take her outside of OSS because the multi-rifle profile is a must-take over a combi. But with the multi-rifle, she can do so many things as the second part of the list after your Dakini, your splash of Dakinis all over the place. So yeah, definite case of mechanical power compensating for mechanical. Not mechanical weakness, mechanical power compensating for lack of versatility of pieces. But again, it's interesting to play that, and they do it well.
Sure.
All right, QK.
QK. I mean, right at the very start of the update, I would have put them at a definite mid A.
Talking about fucking travesties.
And then that was just a bait and switch because they don't actually have 2 Harris teams. They only have 1. Apparently that was a mistake. But then they might have said somewhere on the forums that maybe it wasn't a mistake and maybe it needs an update, or I'm not completely up to speed with where that's at the moment. So,
yeah, okay, sorry. Someone is telling me that the Osiris does not have a combi profile. That's correct. Sorry. What I'm thinking of is the combination of the hacking device, multi-rifle, and lieutenant +1 order. The only way that you can combine lieutenant +1 order with a hacking device is in OSS, and that's the secret sauce. Neither of the Osiris lieutenants are particularly interesting in vanilla because they aren't hackers. Whereas the OSS one is a hacker. That's the piece I was looking for. I got halfway there, and then, but it's the same thing, right? It's the unique OSS has a unique profile that makes it genuinely good. All right, back to QK. Fucked if I know. I do know. One thing I do know is that as long as we're opining, they should have multiple Harrys. Headshine mentions that apparently Heloise is talking to them about maybe adding the design team about maybe adding it back, and I think anyone would welcome that. I'm honestly inclined to say top of C right now, and I think that's just because as much as like, hey, 2 Harry's teams would be cool, and the Azrael Harry's team is cool, there is kind of a notable lack of mechanical strength in QK. You look at what they've got access to, and it's a wide variety of things that individually all kind of like don't leap off the page. The Odalisque is almost the perfect QK profile where you look at it and you're like, oh, that's fine. That's a no winning cap shock immune model for like kind of slightly too many points. Oh, all right. The whole of QK feels like that for me.
Sure.
Nothing about them that I hate. And if they get multiple Heresis back, they'll have something that's mechanically unique. Like, oh, they've got Scarface, that's cool. But they're full of stuff that kind of feels like that. Top of the Seas.
Yeah.
But that's where I think they sit.
Okay.
All right, Shazvastii.
Shazvastii. What are we looking at here? Let me just bring up one army so I know what I'm talking about. I think they're. Well, you're dropping them in at the top of B.
My feel is something like that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's and that's like they could also be bottom of A. For me, that's off the back of the mechanical uniqueness. There are pieces that exist in Shazvastii that, thank God, they only exist in Shazvastii and not vanilla combined. Basically. And mostly that's the Speculo Mind Layer, but like I don't care. That makes a faction by itself. There are lists that Shazvastii can make that you look at and you're like, oh, there's no fire teams there. Also, I'm fucking terrified.
Yeah, I mean, but it's that flexibility though of that they don't have to build as a sectoral. They don't have to build building around the fire team. That's why I'd probably put them in A tier because they do have the variance of threat vectors that you find in vanilla because you're not constrained in putting all the nice tasty pieces together in a link. You can spread them out and come from cover different angles.
And the mechanically strong stuff is mechanically very strong. If you want to put them in A, whereabouts do you reckon?
Above second last.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay. Steel Phalanx.
What's that? Steel Phalanx.
That is the Phalanx. Yep.
Probably B for me. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see where they go later this year.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, there's just not much there from my perspective.
Okay, I'm putting them top of B, and that is because I hard disagree. Steel Phalanx are a sleeper faction right now, especially post link updates. Like it's what is it? Oh, it's +1 ballistic skill. That's not a big deal. Yeah, it's +1 ballistic skill on Phoenix. A ballistic skill 13, shock immune, no wounding cap, heavy rocket launcher with mimetism -6. I almost said ODD there and then dated myself. There are so many pieces in Phalanx that are just like raw mechanical strength in a can. You pay for some of them fairly, but not for others. Like no faction with Ajax can be bad.
Do you want to put them at A tier?
I almost kind of do, and here's why. I have written and I have played against Phalanx lists that have realized Phalanx are a genuine hacking faction now, and it is scary. Themiros the Eidos and Scylla in combination are affordable even in a 15 trooper list, and are genuinely good hackers. Themiros is a BS12 pitcher with no wounding cap and a serviceable Whip 14 hacking device, plus he has 0 pain, which is like a really good, low-key, really good program to have on a hacker that also happens to be hard to kill. And then Scylla never went anywhere. She's single wound, but she's a hacker with her own repeaters and ECM. And just randomly, she can be an Evo hacker. And have you looked at Ectromoy? Have you looked at them? Holy shit! I'm just gonna randomly go to Ectromoy right now, and I'm gonna read out a profile because no one seems to remember that these exist. For 20 points, you get a Phys 13 drop troop with CC22, Martial Arts Level 3, Super Jump, a DACCW, and a Chain Rifle +1 burst for 20 points. And also, there's a Whip 14 hacker profile for only 5 points more. They're cooked. You should be using those things in vanilla ALF if you aren't already. So, no, there is strong... If anyone has gotten this far in the recording, an hour and a half in, if you have not been playing...
I'm sitting here with my mouth open because I've never seen this before.
They're so good.
That's ridiculous. For 20 points, AVA 4 as well. Not
All right.
going to take 4, but 20 points, you can take more than 1.
Hedgehome's saying here that there's been at least one person who has won an IGL with Steel Phalanx. Excellent, because they deserve that. Great faction. If they get... I don't know if they'll get buffed. They're in a solid place, to be perfectly frank. But they're very, very good.
Okay.
Alrighty, Spiral Core.
Spiral Core, again, similar to Toha. I don't know what I'm talking about, so
all right,
go right ahead, Rob.
I'm going to say somewhere bottom of B, very bottom of B. I think very bottom of B. We have probably the best Spiral Core player that I know personally, in Canberra. That's Ed from Canberra, and he's played them. He's pushed them through the Link team update. And the change to Tricore bodied them pretty hard. They got some stuff to make up for it that is like pretty interesting. And there is some stuff that you can still do in terms of like they have the K1 engineer and like Kriegel and Nima. And like there are pieces there that can link in ways that you can't necessarily do the same way with Toha because of unique profiles. But that change...
I hadn't thought about Tricore because that was like their big thing.
Yeah, the fact that Tricore went from giving you full Link team bonuses to full Link tier bonuses but no composition bonuses really did. It kicked the legs out from under them in a pretty big way. There's still stuff there, and frankly, like if you told me, hey, it's Toha with no McCalls but with Helots, I'd tell you that's a pretty fair trade. And it is, because Helots are still a fantastic piece. But Spiral Core are in a point now where like they have to find themselves. And Ed's in chat, actually, and he's made the point. Some of the categories that we've got here, scenario game. Spiral Core have a very constrained specialist lineup. There are basically like no, for example, in countermeasures, there are no veterans in the like entire faction outside of Nima and Kielsans and Alas Kisan. Like it's a very narrow, like hard to fit in every list. Obviously, they're not hackers par excellence. They have like some long, like their table game is okay, but it's constrained around single rune models. And basically the viral sniper, and if your opponent has BTS 9, which is not uncommon, the viral sniper can be a real tick to like actually make those rounds stick. So like they have Janstar, much the same as Toha does. They have Greif operators. They have mechanical uniqueness out the wazoo. But I think in this environment, they're sitting somewhere between a B and a C, just trying to figure out what a modern Spiral Core list looks like. We have someone here saying that there's a top UK player that considers Spiral one of the best factions in the game because of the combination of board presence of snipers and helots and impersonators. I don't disagree, but I think that is playable around, and one of the best ways to play around that is with guided missiles. And guess what's a strong tactic right now? If you know how to play into Spiral in 2022, they are They're an army that you have to respect, but so is everything all the way through the bottom of C tier. If you disrespect Druze, they'll give you a bad time. If you disrespect Spiral, you will crack your fucking jaw. If you don't understand Spiral, you will break your face on them. But if you do, that's I think where they sit. They have mechanical challenges that the loss of Tricor as a good rule has pulled them back down into the B tier in terms of their ability to compensate for it. And in a similar note, actually, faction that was very much changed.
I'd probably put Starco at C tier, and the main reason being with the updates. If you want to play Starco like you used to play Starco, you just played Corregidor. So I don't think they have, like, they've got, like, there's one nice link which is pretty much an auto include with what's his name, the sniper, Nauf, that's it.
Yep.
But like other than that, they are, whereas previously they were like, they did have some of their own flavor. I think that's sort of gone away now.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree or not. Absolutely. So I think they were a mono build before. I think the first game I played against at CanCon was literally against the Starco list, and I sat there for most of the game getting bombed by EM grenades from 32 inches away, just like weathering the bombardment, waiting for like any chance to make an attack. That's gone, but it's cleared the air a little bit, and if you look at their roster, there are pieces in there that didn't necessarily like have a home or were like clear strengths at the beginning of the edition, or didn't exist at the beginning of the edition, that have changed them a bit. And so specifically, like, Rail Spectre is good, Nauf is good, like there are these 32, 35 point power pieces. Fiddler is incredible. Uhahu is good. Handelman has dropped off. I think we would struggle to rate them. Like, they're not in the A tier because they don't have all of these things all at once. But there's just enough like mechanical uniqueness in there that includes, by the by, core linking now, that I'm not convinced. Like, they are more scary to me than QK. So definitely, if they're in the C tier, they're top of the C tier.
Okay.
In some respects,
so it's either the top of the C.
Yeah,
or bottom.
It's. I mean, like, we're splitting hairs. It's either here or here. One of those two. I think I'm comfortable putting them top of the C, but I think there's a fair bit to them. I think there's a fair bit to them. And the Riot Girl Haris, Nauf in the core, the presence of a Trip Hammer now, who's not a bad tag at all.
Yeah.
There's enough there. Like, Hellcats are one of those underrated pieces, just for example. I reckon if you can't build a Starco list that is mostly full of like, oh, that's pretty scary pieces, you're probably not paying enough attention to the faction. But
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. All right. Getting to the end. Starmada.
Starco.
Starmada. Yeah.
Starmada.
They got punched in the gut almost harder than Spiral Core did by the link team changes. Yeah, I think so. Okay, let me back that one up a little bit. We had a player win at least 2 events locally with a Starmada core link soup, like a Starmada super link, which was like Hector, Parvati, a bronze, a XYZ, and Hector is a piece that cannot afford to lose 2 points of ballistic skill as an active gunfighter.
Yeah, I agree with that.
When you're doing things like shooting at 32 inches with him, he can't afford to be ballistic skill 10. Or ballistic skill 11, as the case may be. There's still cool stuff in there, but in many other respects, like I want to say there are 0 unique profiles in Starmada. Let's actually check that while I'm running my mouth. Their links like Kappa don't particularly excite me. They have Parvati, but like Tangao, like, oh boy. They have Chaxa long arms. Woohoo! They have Andromeda. I'm just going to check and see if Andromeda is in O12. Because if she is, yeah, Andromeda is in O12. And that's like, you look at O12, where we put them, we've put them here. Yeah, Stamata is O12, but worse. I think they're C tier.
Yep, that's cool.
And even with like the Raven Eye officers, which are a fantastic addition. How many of them can you have in Stamata? Doing a really quick check. This is great radio. Raven Eye officers. Okay, availability 2. That's nice. Are they linkable? Probably. Yeah, they are.
There's a lieutenant option there as well.
Yep.
I think they're the only faction that get them as lieutenant.
But like, if you look at, for example, that security fire team in Stamata, which is I think is what a modern Stamata list would be based around, where you have Kappas, which are 12-point ballistic skill 12 line infantry. Yeah, there's a Kappa HMG, there's a Kappa multi-sniper, there's a Kappa hacker. You can push that link out with like a pair of Raven Eye officers, which are fantastic, to be fair. And so what you get is you get an O12 list that has a fairly okay light infantry core link team, but does not have access to Sirius or other, like their hacking game is notably weaker. And I'm actually just going to really quickly check, is there a hacking device plus? Yeah, they have cyber ghosts, but they don't have Sirius teams.
Yep.
I think what you get in Stamata compared to what you give up from O12.
O12.
Yeah, like you look at the delta here. There's only like 4 factions between the two of them, but like we could maybe put Stamata there. Actually, no, I think I've talked myself into it. This conversation around the security team, I think it at least puts them in a stronger place than Kapu Kalki, who also have the same kind of thing, but don't have access to the Zeta tag, for example, or hacking device pluses. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Bottom of the B tier, somewhere around here, but actually probably pretty close to O12. It's somewhere in this bottom band.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Svelheim Winter Force.
I reckon they're an easy A tier.
Easy A tier. They do what Pano does best, and they lean into it.
Super hard. No faction with the Kahu, linkable or unlinkable, can ever be considered bad.
Yeah, sure.
I reckon they are above, basically putting them in comparison to other Pan-Oceanian factions, they are better than Neoterra. It is worth noting that if you think about how we're categorizing this, they have some lack of mechanical uniqueness, where they have like very little in the way. Do they have a single airborne deployment trooper? Do they have any camouflage? I want to say probably yes. I'm forgetting them because it's just all about the Yotam, it's all about the Kahu and like Liang Kai. They
got a Beast Hunter, Ninja.
Yeah, basically that's it, right? They have this really shallow pool, of airborne and they had no airborne, and they have like a tiny amount of camouflage, mostly off of the back of the Beast Hunters now. Let's not really justify those ninjas with a response. But they make up for that with so much mechanical strength.
Yep, that's right. Like, they will blow you off the table.
Yeah. So I think they're comfortably sitting somewhere very close to Neoterra. Probably above Toha, I would say.
Okay.
Tatari Army Corps. Somewhere in the Bs. Somewhere bang in the middle of the Bs.
B. There's not much going for them.
Yeah, next to probably below O12, I reckon.
Okay.
Just like right next to O12, below Dashat. They got a bit of a hit because the useful linkability of veteran Kazakhs diminished, and there's still like plenty going on there, but they have the worst dog warriors. Carmen and Batard are awesome. Why do I not talk about... So for Svelheim, they have Uma Sorensen, who, yes, is a profile and has camouflage. Cool, moving on. Svelheim are still distinguished by a huge quantity of mechanical strength, compensating for a relatively small amount of mechanical weakness. She exists, yes. So Tatari Army Corps. Tatari Army Corps, I think, one of those factions that did take a hit. Like unlike, say, Cosmoflot, where you could link... you can link Volcalax with no penalty with Rockhots. The ability to like link line. There's not really a great core. The Veterans Core, I think it's called, in Tatari Army Corps is fine, but it's expensive.
Yep.
The whatever they're called, the like elite infantry.
Frontovix.
Frontovniks, yep. They're okay, but they're expensive. And Ariadne, like you compare them, they cost almost exactly the same as like Highlander Greys in Caledonia, and Highlander Greys they are not. They're elite light-ish infantry, and stapling a team of 5 together of them plus veteran Kazakhs gets really expensive really fast. So you start running into the problem of building a list around like skirmishes and independent assets, in which case you could play vanilla Ariadne.
Yeah, definitely. And it is a shame that because like the vet Kazakh in the line Kazakh link or with the Frontovic as a wild. I think Frontovics used to be wild cards as well. I feel like there used to be one Frontovic in that link, or maybe I'm thinking of something else. But it's they used to be much more flexible than they are now.
All right, Tunguska.
Tunguska. Where are the other ones? Are they? They're B, right?
They are. I think
they're not better than any of the other.
Yeah, I think they're probably the weakest Nomad sectoral without being bad.
Mm-hmm.
I would put them somewhere right next to, probably here between O12 and Tatari Army Corps.
Yep.
Kind of a lack of, frankly, linked Grenzers are pretty good. This concludes the list of things that Tunguska has going for it over vanilla, basically. That's actually unfair, because Hollowman, we should still credit Hollowman. A good Hollowman player, Tom Bowl from Sydney, for example, that like has discipline around moving forward and then pulling back and using that like remote presence heavy infantry repairability is a bloody scary thing. And like credit to them, Tunguska definitely have multiple good lists. They have two. They have 2 good lists. They have a list with lots of Hollowmen and a list without lots of Hollowmen, and only the list with lots of Hollowmen distinguish them from vanilla Nomads. That said, being in the shadow of one of the game's very, very few S tiers is not bad. Not a bad place to be.
Yeah. So for all those reasons, that's what's sort of holding them back from being better than anything. But
yeah. Still comfortably strong faction to play, but I think the weakest of a bunch of good factions.
Sure.
US Ariadne.
I think they got an improvement from the changes. Still probably mid B.
Yep. For a long time, quote unquote, they were considered like people would have put them here, right? Like next to Druze. And I think that's 100% wrong. But it's even more so now. Here is my like most recent US Ariadne experience, and it's one of underrating them. I took an avatar, and my opponent deployed a grunt link with grunt snipers, and I'm like, ha ha ha. Foolish Ariadne player, you have no way of overcoming my mimetism and my armor. I will stand watching your grunt link with grunt snipers, and my opponent activated them. And I learned that grunt snipers don't just have sniper rifles anymore. They have +1 damage AP sniper rifles. And I took 2 wounds in the first face-to-face roll, and it was punished for my hubris. And the avatar was dead by the end of the turn. And that was 100% a thing that happened. And I respect US Ariadne a lot more now. But just generally, like, Devil Dogs are probably the best of the Dog Soldier warbands. They're not bears, but they're still really good. And they are much cheaper. Like 23 points is way cheaper than an Impetuous Bear. It is as expensive as a regular bear, but you have the same number. You have more wounds. It's 3 wounds in that package. They're a great close combat piece. Like Devil Dogs are awesome. Foxtrots are serviceable, but like there's enough happening in US Ariadne that like you should not underrate them anymore. Like they are certainly not actively bad. They're a good, solid middle of the B tier. And honestly, we put them above Tatari Army Corps, and I think I stand by that. Maybe here, like legitimately, I actually think
right next to
Tatari Army Corps. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Varuna.
That one. Varuna took a bit of a hit, mate. Probably the bottom of B, I reckon.
I don't know. This is a weird one. I would make the argument that they are better than military orders.
Okay.
So here's my take. It is Varuna are Pan-Oceania's asymmetric warfare faction, and people for a long time people perceived of Varuna as the Kamau sniper plus Helot faction. Yeah. And If you just divorce yourself from that, Kamau are still perfectly serviceable elite light infantry. But if you stop that and think of Varuna as the Pan-Oceanian plus Helots faction, they start making more sense. You still have Peacemakers. You have the Cutter, which is, and I mean, frankly, I almost prefer Squalos to Cutters. Squalos are much more multi-role. So you have this like defense, and you still have Helots, and by the by, Helots are still a fantastic one Peacemaker, AVA one. By the by, like the mix is still there. It is weaker, and actually, particularly off the back of one Peacemaker. I like they're definitely the weakest of the Pan-Oceanian. Actually, they're the weakest of the Pan-Oceanian sectorals. Can someone in chat give me the AVA of Peacemakers in military orders, please? Because that would decide it for me. There we go. Military orders are above Varuna Immediate Reaction Division because they have 2 Peacemakers and Varuna has 1. But like if you compare them to Dashat, for example, it's that feels comparably strong. In fact, these two factions, I'll say this now, these two factions are a mirror of each other. Dashat are the angry offensive version of Varuna, who are the like, and it makes perfect sense if you think about the troops they have access to, whereas Varuna are the like defensive version of a very similar list. I still like Varuna. I think they're probably like, again, 012, they're right next to them. Yeah, this feels right to me.
Righto. White Banner. Next up. White Banner is the faction I've been playing.
Yeah, how are you finding them?
Exclusively for like the past 18 months. And I'm really, really enjoying it because they have all of the stuff that I like from vanilla. And also I get to have some link teams, which is nice. I put them at the bottom of A tier. I have been finding it difficult. I mean, with the new link changes, it's been much easier for me to diversify my link builds.
Mm-hmm.
Previous to that, I just found myself pigeonholed.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm sort of looking more towards having like a 3-man core and a Harris rather than necessarily having to go for that top 5-man core because it's very hard. You don't get a good pure link.
How are you finding those monk teams?
Look, I think it's a bit of a trap, honestly, because it's like 31 points for the two 5-point monks and Liang Kai, but it means those monks no longer do what you use monks to do, which is be warbands. They're now almost like a poor man's auto battery, almost. And so you don't want them to go down. You don't want to put them into tough positions because they're now regular orders. But because they're regular orders, they're not getting the extra activations that you get from your impetuous as well. I've run it a few times, and it still does exist in one of my go-to lists. But I feel like if you want to do it properly, you still want to have maybe one extra monk just to have some impetuous on the table as well.
So I definitely still comfortable running impetuous monks in a link. I actually think that Jinquo is probably the better, as much as she's more expensive, and I don't like her as much in isolation.
I agree, and she does give you an extra. She's
a gun. She's a real weapon.
Gunfighter, right? Yeah. With mimetism and like a multi-rifle, doesn't have great range, but midfield gunfighting, she can do it. And that +1 burst is great, but she is still very expensive.
Fair enough.
And that sort of middle, because you've got so many, the faction does fill up the middle point area with things like
very quickly.
With tigers and tiger soldiers. And
Guilang and Daofei are good, but they're
was
not
the word
cheap.
that I was trying to look for.
Yep.
You've got Guilang, you've got Hundun, you've got a whole bunch of stuff that's already around 30 points. So that's why I just been able to fit.
I like the assessment. I like the assessment of them as vanilla, but with good links. And I think that's a good fit for them.
One of the main criticisms of White Banner has been, why would I play White Banner when I can just do all that stuff in vanilla? But now that they've got that unique fire team with the Shaolin fire team is a bit of uniqueness there. that you can't get elsewhere.
But
They can do a decent pain train as well with Shang-Chi and Jujax, and if you do want to lean into a pure Link, that's how you do it. Because Jujax are pretty cheap.
There's nothing wrong with them in the tag game either.
Oh mate, the Blue Wolf is my new best friend.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it.
I think I'd actually probably put them above Vanilla Pano. Just in terms of minutiae.
Yeah, I would as well.
I got a lot of time for White Banner.
Yep.
I think they can do so many things in a versatile way. They can play like a variety of tables. They can play a whole variety of lists. They are constrained by the fact that some of their like capability slots are expensive. Like Guilangs, for example, you can't just like casually put Guilangs in a list. You can't casually put Shang-Chi in a list, even in like a little 3-person team with Zhanshi. But within those restrictions, there's a ton of good stuff that's going on in White Banner. I had a lot of time for it. I think they're really cool. All right, White Company, second last.
White Company of all the NA2 factions, I reckon they're the best.
Yeah, I think I agree.
They have great hacking. They have there was a meme a little while ago on Crypt Posting about like the soup that is White Company, and it still stands true. They're great. Hackable Karu, if not Karu.
Kahu. What are we talking about? You said hackable.
Not hackable, linkable. Linkable Kahu. And like you said before, any faction that can link Kahu can't be bad.
I'm going to say this is a bad litmus test, but let's just go ahead and say it. No faction with AVA3 Peacemakers and AVA2 AVA2 Peacemakers and AVA3 Fugazi has fallen outside of the A tier, and I think we won't break that pattern. Also, no faction with Kahu has fallen outside. I think that like they're somewhere around here. They definitely, for me, they feel so they are a light infantry faction, 100%. Yep. The multi-wound pieces, like they're not an orc faction despite having access to orcs. The closest thing to a multi-wound troop they have that I would genuinely expect to commonly see is Hawkwood, and he's expensive as fuck. The Guija is also kind of unfortunately not a fantastic tag. Until they do something with Super Jump, paying for it on a Guija hurts a little bit. It's not bad, but Guija is probably the worst of the main battle tags, like below even a Magariba, and it's hard to fit. It's hard to easily fit in White Company, but. And being a light infantry...
You don't think the martial arts makes up for that?
Oh, I love martial arts on the Guija, but it's 82 points, I think.
Yeah, it is.
And the thing about the Guija, like stop talking about the Guija for a second. The thing about the Guija is that I like that it's a tag that can shift between long range support and close assault, but most of what I want it to be doing is long range support. And it's like you think about the Magariba. The Magariba is a long-range support tag that has a bloated cost, but that bloated cost lets it do interesting things at that long-range band, where it gets to like fling mines around and reload itself. Yeah. Whereas the Guija, that extra cost lets it fight really effectively at 0 inches. And telling me there's such a tension there compared to the Gecko, so the Gator, right? The Guija can defend itself from enemy CC troops. The Gator can do the same thing, and I actually prefer the Gator's kit. The fact that the Gator has Natural Born Warrior CC20, I actually prefer that to the Guija's martial arts, despite the fact that like the Guija's probably better at defending itself. If you look at the face-to-face rolls, the Guija's probably better at defending itself from enemy CC attackers. I almost prefer the way that the Gator does it, and the Gator gets extra stuff for those points.
Yeah. And it's 6 points cheaper as well.
It's holy shit. Yeah, it is too. Yes, and there you go. So I think being a light infantry faction, a single wound faction, is something that probably keeps the. They're not a deeply versatile. Despite the fact that you look at White Company and you're like, holy shit, they have great things from many factions. They don't feel like they're deeply versatile, but the mechanical strength is cool. They can play many parts of the board. There's tons going on in White Company, and they just, if nothing else, they would check their way into the bottom of the A tier just off of some of the things that you have access to.
Yep.
All right.
Last.
Definitely not
Vanilla
least.
Eugene.
Vanilla
Before we talk
Eugene.
about this, Rob, where would the forums put Vanilla Eugene at the moment?
It's been okay. Last time I went to I don't go to the forums much anymore. And the last time I went to the forums, I clicked on one post and saw someone saying that the Umbra Samaritan was a bad hacker because it would lose a hacking duel with a BTS9 hacker. And then I just closed the window and turned my computer off and walked outside and smelled the sunshine. Because that is the dumbest take I have ever heard. The idea that a stealth martial arts for Protheon super jump model might be bad because it does not win a hacking duel was so far below the worst take I've ever heard that I'm just like, nope, sabbatical again. So I don't actually know, but from like a month ago, actually the Yuching forums are kind of elevating themselves above the salt mines a little bit.
That's great. That's good to hear. I would put them mid-A tier. I think that I put them right in between, maybe just below Ariadna.
Yeah, I think I would put them, very close to Svalorheimer, and actually for kind of similar reasons. The Yuching generally have an issue where scenarios, like playing scenarios with Yuching, and not just being like, it's annihilation and I'll push buttons when the game is over. That's hard. Like the Yuching pushes you so directly towards stepping on the gas and not stopping until your opponent is a smoking ruin that everything like rotates around that. But you cannot say that's only gotten stronger with their access to like, hey, you can duo a Sujan now, by the by, with a specialist or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to mention. The duo list from Vanilla Eugene is a real sleeper. There's some absolute sauce in there if you take a bit of a look. In terms of being able to do some of the stuff that even Invincible Army can do with extra orders, with NCO and tactical awareness as well, combining that in a duo with something that would never have that type of thing, like combining Cockrum with the Sujan or something like that.
Yeah, and they're a vanilla faction, so you can make multiple lists with them. It's not like Hassassin Baram, where Hassassin Baram kind of like have one list with like the last 3 or 4 models, maybe offer some variation. I'm actually rethinking that. We might move Hassassin Baram, but anyway, Yuching post update has had such a like splash of spice on top of they already had mechanical strength, but now it is interesting mechanical strength. I think they have probably by far the best duos of any vanilla faction. Like as a combined army is up there at top of the totem pole, and I think that's pretty reasonable. But even then, you look at the duos combined army gods.
Duos are boring as all get out. There's nothing that's interesting.
They're borderline useless. There's like one interesting one where you might duo a Raicho with a tactical awareness Tinbot Suryat. You won't, because you need those points for other things. But you might. It would be cool. You could play that. But like that's it. Whereas like by comparison, Vanilla Yuching is a faction of duos, and it is very interesting. They are good. So, offensive geared, Vanilla Panoshiani and Hackerslam. I don't know if Hackerslam do have cool duos, Zephyr. I get what you mean. There's like you can put a remote with an Asawira, and that's kind of cool. You can finally duo Mukhtars. My read on that is I got the ability. Yes, so duoing an Asawira and a Rafik stops frenzy, but like okay, Asawiras are often on one-way trips anyway. Or, like my favorite Asawira profile, despite the Spitfire being good, my favorite Asawira profile remains the Doctor, and you can't duo an Asawira Doctor if you wanted to have helper bots. I got over my desire to duo Mukhtars at exactly the same time as they gave us duoed Mukhtars, which that's a me thing. There are definite like interesting. I am wrong. Okay, fair enough. I don't think I am, and I'm the one recording this, so alongside Nick. But I think for my money, the existence of duos in vanilla has changed Yuqing for the good more than any other vanilla faction. Although, yeah, definite honorable mention to Hack Islam. Just because I don't find those things super compelling doesn't mean they aren't. It's just I haven't experimented with them that much. So look, there we go. Going to take a step back just really briefly. We're rolling in on almost exactly 2 hours, which is about what I expected. My jaw hurts. Is there anything in here that we think is a little bit of an injustice that maybe should change? I'm actually kind of leaning towards Assassins being a little bit higher.
I mean, I don't really have much of an opinion on Assassins, so if you want to bump them up,
I think we can put them. I think put them down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think we've been pretty thorough.
Yeah, I kind of
in the whole like we've been cross-referencing back to what's already there the whole time.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything that's really screaming.
No.
Needs to move.
And
I mean, maybe there could be some shuffling within the tiers, but I can't see anything that needs to change.
No.
Right now.
Stuff could certainly change over like fast forward 6 months, and say like ISS and Spiral Core might bind themselves in an interesting way. New releases, of course, will change things. Like as O12 and Starmada shift towards being like more complete factions, that will sort of significantly change them. I don't think we'll ever really see like Drew's, for example. Drew's home is here in what I would call the challenge tier, right? And it's actually
you play Drew's because you want to play Infinity hard mode. That's why you play them.
Yeah, there's genuine utility in that, right? Where it perfect like 50% win rates, 100% across the board is actually like you don't want major outliers, but it is genuinely useful to have the occasional like not joke faction, but Magic the Gathering does this really, really well, where they purposely design cards that are not competitively optimal, but do something that appeal to people's sense of uniqueness. And that it's like important to remember that the perfect game design is not every faction has a 50% win rate. It's every faction has something about them that's compelling and interesting and unique. Now, I think like in the case of French Ariadna, the only interesting thing about them is that they are the hard mode of the game. But hey, Julian has taken them to an event and beat up new players.
I'm not sure if he's played them since the new since the update has dropped, but he was playing them for a good amount of sort of earlier this year and has not lost a game with French somehow.
Selective target acquisition.
That's also.
And as a bit of a conclusion as well, I think it says something that what's that like 5/6 of the game or more is in these two solidly playable tiers. I'm pretty comfortable with that as a conclusion.
Yep.
Like that feels about right to me. Like this big even melange. Like, yep, Combined Army are very good. Nomads are very good. But then like all of this is very good, and even the B factions are still like playable, interesting. And if you tell me, if you like, once you get to the bottom of the B factions and someone says, "Oh yeah, this won an event," I'd be like, "That's interesting," but I wouldn't be, "That's surprising." It's just like, "Cool, tell me about that." So yeah, all right, we've just clocked in at 2 hours and 2 minutes. I hope people in the audience and watching this on YouTube and listening to this after the fact have enjoyed it. Nick, thank you very much for the opportunity and for like calling my bluff and making this be a thing that happened.
Anytime, Rob. I've had an absolute pleasure. So thanks for coming on.
And we'll call it a night there. Have a good evening, everyone.